everything that we are as men is being told that it's toxic, which is not. Ambition is not toxic. To have strength and courage is not toxic. I'll tell you what is a toxic man. A toxic man is someone who is
Straight Outta The Lair. He's an inspiration to hundreds of thousands who follow him online for his incredible message and inspirational story. Brought up with the hardship of poverty, abuse and trauma could have easily led him down a terrible road, but in spite of it, he built an empire not only to pull himself up, but impact those around him. Like me, he's an immigrant with a passion for entrepreneurship and fitness. He's the CEO for one of the fastest growing franchise companies, Fit Body Bootcamp, a best-selling author and coach to some of the most powerful and influential people on the planet. You may know him from his fantastic podcast, his live speaking events, or his widely popular YouTube channel. Here's a podcast with my friend, Bedros Keuilian. Joined today by my good friend, and honestly, I get motivated so much to do these things, but you've taken me next level. I came in with nerves this morning.
Stop.
Bedros Keuilian, my friend, listen, entrepreneur, CEO, best-selling book author, family man of many morals that I totally align to. I mean, where's the list end you?
You know, I'm a lucky man. And we're fellow immigrants. And I want to let you know that I think this new studio is amazing, man. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be the first one in it.
Yeah, and listen, we spoke a few months ago about doing this podcast, and obviously your schedule is crazy, you know, and thankfully I worked with the incredible team on putting this together. It was you that actually circled back with me, and I said, hey, listen, we are going to do this on the new set, so whenever that time aligns with you, we are going to put it on. So here we are, my friend. I've waited for this moment.
And by the way, I want to let your audience know what a man of your word you are, because we've been working for several months to get me in here, and between your schedule and mine, we haven't been able to. And I just assumed that, because you told me when I was out here working out with my son at your gym, you're like, hey man, I want you to be the first one in the new studio. But our timelines didn't match up. And so I figured, and I watch your show and I listen to it and I go, well, he's either still doing it off the couches because he decided not to build a studio, or he's going to build a studio down the line. And then when we were texting a couple days ago and you tell me, hey man, I just want to let you know you're going to be the first one in the studio. Like, you waited to keep your word. I appreciate that, and I'm honored. And I hope that I could do it justice.
Oh, my man, listen, as I said to you also in text, I get them nerves. I get them nerves for the big things, and it's been quite some time, honestly. And I say this sincerely. My team is here, you know, behind me, and they know how much I've really want to make sure that this has been as well put together as the set has been put together. And again, it's an honor to have you, your mate. And I know there's so many different topics that we can go down the line of. But I want to start on by just talking about what you're working on right now, because you're a man of many hats, always exchanging sort of things. What is the biggest thing that you're working on right now that you can tell the audience?
I think the biggest thing I'm working on right now, two things. And actually, this is the first time I'm talking about this. I'm in the process of writing my second book. So my first book was Man Up, that came out in 2018, September of 2018. And it's, people always go, is it for men? No, it's human up to your higher potential. But in the process of me humaning up to my highest potential some 12, 15 years ago, I kept telling myself, man up and do the right thing, man up and have that conversation, man up and make that decision. So that's why I titled it Man Up. It was like this personal mantra that I had with myself. But I'm writing a second book now. And so the working title, it's still a working title, so I'm not going to share it, but it's literally dovetailed off of my podcast, which is the second big thing I'm working on, which is my podcast, The Bedros Keuilian Show. If any of your audience follows me, they know that I had the Empire Show, which was focused on interviewing entrepreneurs and me talking about my entrepreneurial journey and helping entrepreneurs make more money, create better systems, scale their companies, etc. But in 2020, I felt called, like literally called, to stop doing interviews and look down the barrel of the camera and address men, specifically on what is happening with our country and what our responsibility as men are. And I fought that calling for about 6 months. So literally the Empire Show stopped at episode 209. And then for 6 months, there was no episode. There was no goodbye, no nothing. For 6 months, I was fighting, negotiating, like, who am I to do this solo episodes, looking down the barrel of the camera, talking to men about their mission, purpose on this planet. Finally, I gave in because I believe the Creator will just keep knocking on your door in the form of anxiety and depression and overwhelm. And that is how consciousness will try and get your attention. So I launched the Bedros Keuilian show. It's been almost a year now. That's been blowing up, and that is, I decided to take the content from my show and go into much greater detail in the second book that I'm writing, which will probably be released a couple years from now. But those are the two big things I'm working on. Thankfully, all my companies, I've got great leaders in place. I've got great staff in place. And so my companies are growing, and I probably meet with each leader of my company once every 2 weeks. So that allows me a lot of time to focus on the book and on the podcast.
You mentioned the word consciousness. What does that mean to you?
Your higher self, consciousness. I think everyone knows, even the atheist knows that there's a higher power. And they know it because you put an atheist in a car and you start driving as fast as you can towards a wall, and the next thing out of their mouth is going to be, oh God, right? Well, why oh God? Like, and believe you me, I don't follow any religion specifically, but I do believe there's a universal consciousness. There is a creator, there is a source that we all come from and that we go back to. And so our job, our mission as humans, we're born as human animals, impulsive, emotional, greedy, selfish, and that's by design. Those are the elements of survival. You have to do all of that, be impulsive, greedy, emotional, go after what you want, without looking out for others to be able to survive. But at some point as you grow up, self-mastery makes you selfless, kind, generous, compassionate, and you start seeing the world as you're the witness inside of this body, this vehicle. And that when you start witnessing the world through your eyes, that is when you are most connected to consciousness, the higher self, right? We go from human animal to human being. We're not all human beings. We are very human animal. And, you take away food and water and shelter from people, you watch how quickly we resort back to being a human animal. And so if we want to really get the best out of ourselves in this human experience, you have to connect to consciousness, your higher self. And that is really when you begin to develop self-mastery.
Yeah. When did this start coming together for you? Because listen, we've lived a life. We've both got our stories, and we persevered through some times. But there must be like an awakening that happens where it hits you in the face. I can say there's been something that's happened to me, post retirement. When did this timeline happen to you? When you started realizing that you had this gift and this consciousness, as you explained?
Yeah. So, and for the record, I believe we all have it, but it has to be earned and tapped into and honed and mastered. And that is the human journey. That's the human journey. But for me, I think when I first realized that there's something greater that I have, I was working as a personal trainer in LA Fitness, La Habra, Southern California. And dude, every male personal trainer would come to me with their problems. And they almost saw me as like an older brother, a dad figure. And some of them I was actually younger than.
Yeah, how old are you at this point in time?
25, 26,
Jeez.
Right?
Yeah.
But my whole life, men have been attracted to me, and they would share things with me, and I would listen. And if I had any life experience in that category, I would tell them my experience, and they would go and execute, and they go, man, things are working out better. I had that conversation. I did this thing. I did that.
I can't leave this light, by the way. I'm attracted to you too. Can't leave the door open for me, bro.
Very mutual. I appreciate that.
Okay, carry on.
Yeah. So anyways, I realized back then as a personal trainer that there was something that I had that attracted people to me. And I knew how to speak to someone's heart, not just their brain, not the logical part, but the heart, the emotions, the feelings, the thing that really moves a man towards action. And I think I gained that from my dad. As I look back now, hindsight's 20/20. I look back, my dad was an amazing storyteller, and he could connect with anyone if he had enough time to speak to them. And so I don't know if that was genetically passed down, if that was just through environmental exposure to my dad, but I developed the ability to listen, to like an active listener, to listen, to ask questions, and then to be able to speak to a man's heart. And because of that, I knew there was something there, and I committed to constantly working on that. And the process of working on that, you begin to work on yourself, because to be able to serve humanity, you have to first serve yourself, heal, transcend, financially find your footing. And in the process of that, you gift your highest self to the world. And that's what I've been able to do. And make no mistake about it, I'm still a work in progress.
Yeah, that I'd say the same thing for me. I'm always a work in progress. But as guys like yourself that are putting out so much great information for guys of all ages, you know, on how morally we should be doing. Like both you and I are blessed to have hardworking dads. Yeah. You know, I want to talk about that story shortly, but there's morals and integrity, and there's you know, things that have been seen through my dad's work ethic that weren't told to me. I just witnessed it. And years later, and of course now as a dad myself, I'm like, wow, what an upbringing I had. It wasn't from financial wealth, or it wasn't because I had everything. I truly had like a father that would get up in the morning, work a 12-hour shift, walk to work in the rain, walk home just because we had one car. My mum can have the car to take us to the school, plus many other things. And of course, you know, you've got that same mentality, same upbringing with your dad's work ethic. And obviously move in, you know, his whole family from Armenia to the United States of America to chase this American dream. So, and as you mentioned your dad, I'd like to explore that. That must have been, for your dad, now as you're a dad of your own, with your own kids, as am I, to think, okay, I'm going to uproot myself, take the bare minimum and go to the United States of America and chase this American dream because your dad knew that it was a better life for you and your kid, for his kids out there, is truly remarkable.
It really is, and you described it so well, and I think I can encapsulate what you just said about both your father and my father by saying they both have the immigrant edge. And while your father and mom have not moved out here, they're still out there in Wales, there's a immigrant mindset that creates this edge where it doesn't matter what the economy is, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are, it doesn't matter if you're lacking the resources, you will find the resources. In the absence of the resources, you will become resourceful, right? And so my dad, he was a member of the Communist Party. So in Armenia, the Soviet Union, we did well. When I say well, compared to anyone living in a third world communist country that's lacking food and democracy. At least he was a member of the Communist Party, not by choice, but they asked him to become a member, because people always ask me, well, why did your dad become a member if he hated communism, if you guys escaped?
You have no choice.
Right? You have no choice. Even though they ask you, would you like to be a member? In 1975, they asked him that. If you say no, you're shipped off to Siberia, never to be seen again, right? And so my dad reluctantly said yes, and then put his communist ID card in the drawer, never once using it to his advantage, and he could have, to get access to food, to get access to better clothes. He wanted to live and work like everyone else did. What my dad did have in Armenia, which was a freaking crazy story, man. On the black market, he had Ray-Ban sunglasses, right?
Really?
Yeah. Jordache jeans.
Jordache.
Yeah. And those of you watching and listening to this, if you Google Jordache, like it is the modern day version of whatever the new hip jeans are.
Okay.
Right? But back in the 70s and 80s, Jordache was the thing. Jordache jeans, very American. Adidas shoes. And he listened to the Beach Boys and Elvis. And he had to do this all in secrecy. So, like, this man was an American within, living in Armenia, Soviet Union. And he worked at a men's clothing manufacturing plant. So he made suits. And they gave them so much material to make a vest, a suit jacket, and a pair of pants. And what my dad would do, he tells me the story, he would put the patterns so close together that for every like 10 or 15 suits he would make, he would have enough material to make one more suit. He would stuff that down his pants, like in his under his shirt, take it home, and then he would make a suit and sell it on the black market. Wow. He did enough of this to be able to create 25,000 rubles. And then he bribed a Soviet official in the consulate to allow us to escape, go on vacation, to Italy, because Italy is sympathizers to the Soviet Union. If he said, hey, I want to go to the United States, they'd be like, you're dead, right? So he said, hey, I'm going on vacation to Italy. Can I get the stamp on my passport for me and my family?
But that was hard back then, just to get a vacation, I'm sure.
Oh,
right?
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like, no one, like North Korea would not want any of its citizens to leave the country. The Soviet Union does not. It doesn't matter if you're going to a sympathizing country. No. But he got the stamp on the passport, and it helped that he was a Communist Party member and loyal, quote unquote, right? And so we went into Italy with 2 suitcases because we had to make it look like that we are going on vacation. So if you're going with all your stuff, it's obvious that you're escaping. So family of 5, I'm the smallest of the family. I'm the baby. I'm 6 years old at the time. My older brother is 19 years old. My sister was 21 years old. And I'm 6 years old. We escape into Rome, Italy. My dad goes right to the American consul. For 10 days, he begs and pleads. The American consul in Rome, Italy, says, look, we are political refugees. If you don't let me into the United States, I have nowhere else to go with my family. They pumped him for information, because if you remember the 80s, it was 1980. This was when the Cold War was happening, right?
Thick of the Cold War.
Yeah, thick of the Cold War.
I done history in school.
Yeah. And so, of course, they've got a Communist Party member right in front of them. So they pump my dad for information, and then they go, where do you want to go to the United States? He had heard that California was warm weather and beautiful scenery. That's how we ended up getting moved to California.
Very interesting.
Yeah, man. And so my dad, man, he's my hero. He risked his life. And he was sick and tired of the cold weather in the Soviet Union and Armenia. And so, we moved, and literally the second day he had a paper route. By day 4, he was also working at a gas station pumping gas. By day, like a weekend, he's got a paper route, he's pumping gas, and he's working at a pizzeria like a busboy. And before you know it, like, he's working hard to make it for us while we're living in Section 8 housing, living off food stamps, looking for food in dumpsters in the back of grocery stores, right? And this was in Santa Ana, California, very gang-infested part of town. But I wouldn't change any of those experiences for anything, man, because that is what taught me the immigrant edge. Like I saw my dad, the risks that he was willing to take, the work that he was willing to do, the resourcefulness he had when he didn't have the resources. Yeah. And I just grew up thinking that's normal. And that's what's allowed me to go through now 3 different economic downturns. And yes, during these economic downturns, I have to work 10 times harder, and my companies have to work 10 times harder, but there's no retreat. We're always charging ahead. And I really believe that trait of resourcefulness has come from my dad.
Your dad, at that point in time, was he even speaking English?
No, he had to learn the language, right? So he's 45 years old. My mom is 42 years old at the time. And I was trying to explain to my son, you met Andrew, I was trying to explain to my son.
Great kid, by the way.
Thank you. I go, Andrew, it's not even like if we all packed up our family and moved to Japan. I go, because we've got Google Translate. And we now have technology and the internet where we can see our way around in any country. Yeah. You don't even have to know the language, right? I go, it would be like if we got on a rocket ship and we went to Mars. Like what my dad did with his family to escape and come to the from the Soviet Union to the United States in 1980 is the equivalent of you packing up your family and going to Mars, and now it's a whole different culture, it's a whole different environment, different language. They don't want you there. Mm-hmm. By the way, we weren't greeted there. The melting pot that is the United States. In 1980, that wasn't the case. I can't tell you how many times I heard people yelling, go back to your own country, you foreigners are taking all of our jobs, because soon after, mid-1980s, there was a massive economic crash. So my dad's got 3 or 4 jobs as a busboy, paper route, pumping gas, and all I would hear is people yelling at my brother, my dad, my sister, my mom, saying, go back to your own country, you're taking our American jobs. And so I grew up with a bit of a chip on my shoulder as well. And you add this work ethic that I got from my dad, and it was like the nuclear bomb of success.
How did your dad stay, I guess, so, because I know you've spoken about your dad a lot, but how did he stay so motivated and keep it away from your kids? Because, listen, you're living the American dream, right? Yeah. What was he telling you during this time where he was facing all kinds of issues at work, being told this and the other? Was there anything that you picked up at that young age?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I never once remember hearing him say that this is hard, it's impossible, that we made the wrong decision. Never once heard that. I rarely saw him during the first 4 or 5 years when we were in America. So I was 6 years old. But so between like 6 and 10, I barely saw my dad because he had multiple jobs. But when I would see him, he never once complained. He just changed, ate, showered, went back to the next job. And that's what he expected of my older brother. That's what he expected of my sister. And then my mom and I stayed home, and then I went to school. But there was a pivotal thing that happened. So my sister, Flex, my sister was a waitress at the same pizzeria that my dad was a busman at, where he bussed tables. And the owner of that pizzeria paid them under the table. We hadn't gotten our green cards yet, and so we didn't have the legal paperwork to get paid. So they paid under the table, which means we got my whole family got paid less than minimum wage, right? Which is fine, whatever. Like, you know, the government gave us Section 8 housing, which people think that it's free. It's not. It's just cheaper rent in very gang-infested, filthy apartment complexes. But so my sister, filthy, bro.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
My sister had a job at that same pizzeria, and the owner of that pizzeria was so cheap, whenever she would get a glass of water, a cup of water, he would taste that cup of water to make sure that it's not Sprite or 7-Up from the vending or from the soda machine. And quite honestly, he was also very hands-on with my sister, very suggestive. And my sister would come home crying every night, man, from work. And my dad would just be furious about it. And she didn't want to quit the job because she knew that she was contributing to the family's money. And one day she was crying so hard, man. And she was so upset at whatever this guy did. I felt, you know, you got to imagine yourself. At this point, I was maybe 7.5, 8 years old. So you feel helpless when you're a kid. 'Cause I'm not making money. I feel like I'm just a burden on them. They're out there doing it. I'm just hearing about it, and I feel helpless. And so my sister was crying and complaining to my mom and dad about her boss. And I went up to her because I guess now looking back, I felt like I needed to have some sense of control over the situation. And I went up to her, and keep in mind, my sister being so much older than me, 17 years older, she also raised me. She's like mom number 2, right? And I said, Julie, when I'm older, you're never going to have to work again because I'm going to make so much money that you never have to work again. And for the last 15 years, my sister's been working for me full-time from home, doing absolutely nothing other than taking care of my mom and dad. And that's how I want it.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That hits me hard, bro.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that truly does. Because one of my questions was, what's your relationship with your siblings? And I guess...
Yeah, my brother and I don't talk anymore. Our core values don't align. He's got a good heart, but he's got healing to do. And sadly, his relationship, one relationship after another, seems to fall apart. And I didn't want my son and my daughter to see that relationship as normal. So he's gone through now 3 marriages. He's got kids that won't talk to him and that he won't talk to. If that happens once, like, hey, man, maybe you chose the wrong partner and things fell apart. Second and third time, there's a pattern now, and you might be at fault because you're the only common denominator. And I love him, man. He's my older brother. But as my kids got older, by me visiting him and talking to him would be me endorsing his lifestyle and his behavior to my kids. And I've got such a ferocious responsibility to my kids. My greatest purpose on this planet is not the businesses that I've created. It is the 2 kids that I will give to this world who will do more for this world than I've ever done. And so I told him, I said, I can't endorse your behavior. My kids are getting older now, and they're asking questions. Why is Uncle being this way? And he wasn't willing to change his ways. And so for the last 7 years now, I haven't spoken to him, and I'm okay with that.
Okay. I know that, your core values in life, that's very hard because, we got blood versus core values. Yeah. And at the end of the day, as you said, it's like you and me have a great responsibility to make sure that, our followers, our kids see that we're acting appropriately and aligning ourselves with the core values that we speak about.
Right.
So for you to have this, blood versus core models. I get my words eventually, bro. Make me so nervous over you. I'm joking. Core values is a tough one. Yeah. It's a true tough one.
It is. And what a hypocrite I would be if I go on my show or I go on shows like this and I talk about being congruent with the man that you want to be, and my kids listen to the show. Andrew's a big fan of you. He listens to the show.
Shout out to Andrew.
Yeah, thank you.
He's a stud.
He is. And to know that, all right, Dad said this on Flex's show, Dad said this on his show, but then behind closed doors, he's a different guy. He's a different dad. He doesn't live the values and the morals that he preaches. Like, the greatest sin and the greatest karmic debt you will ever acquire is being incongruent with the values and the man that you want to be. Because I could only imagine, like, to fall off the pedestal that my kids have me on, holy, for I'd rather you murder me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same way, mate. And I want to dig deep into that later on.
Yeah.
But circling back to your sister and just having that feeling at 7, at 8 years old.
Yeah.
Were you speaking English at this point in time, or did that come later down the line?
I started speaking English faster than everyone because, it's a giant apartment complexes that we lived in, right? These are all Section 8 housing apartment complexes. And my first American friend, his name is Dwayne. Man, I wish I would have gotten his last name. This black kid, but I mean black, like Africa black, right? And he was one of the first kids in that complex, Section 8 housing complex, to befriend me. And he started to teach me English, and then he introduced me to all the other kids. And so I started learning English through environmental exposure.
Yeah.
In fact, his mom introduced me what I thought was American food, because she would whistle, and wherever we were in the complex, dude, she would get out of her front door and whistle. And we're talking a giant complex, like a block big. He would hear his mom's whistle, and he goes, "Guys, I gotta go." And I was like, and it was getting dark that one day, and I'm like, "Dude, where are you going?" He goes, "I gotta eat." I'm like, "Shoot, I'm hungry." I didn't even say it so that he'd invite me. I was just like, a fact, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Right? And he goes, "Come with me." And so his mom would regularly feed me soul food, black food, but I had no idea. I thought, oh, this is great American food.
Oh, beautiful.
It was only like months later that I realized, like, American food and soul food are two different things, man. And so anyway, I wish I could somehow reconnect with Dwayne, but he was my first friend in America. Introduced me to a lot of other kids, but just what a great soul. We
should try to get that. Hopefully, somebody's watching this podcast. Where was this block that you were living back in the day?
So this was by this point, it was Anaheim, California, not too far from Santa Ana, and the apartment complex was called Shade Tree Apartments. Can I tell you another funny story about that apartment complex?
Please, I love stories.
I don't know why I remember so many details. Well, I met so many good friends there. So we moved into Santa Ana, but then very quickly went to Anaheim. They moved us to a different Section 8 housing. That's where I met Dwayne and a lot of my other friends. But as a kid, apartment number 37 was our apartment number at Shade Tree Apartments. By the way, there was no trees at all. It was like all concrete.
It was just shade.
Yeah, concrete and those bars.
Shady people.
Yeah, shady people, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe it was like Shady Tree Apartments. Yeah, there's not a tree in sight. It's Shade Tree Apartments, mother. But so apartment 37, within a week of moving into that apartment, it was like, the family of 5 of us moving into a 2-bedroom apartment. And bro, I'm like scratching my head like no one's business. Like there's like wounds on my head at this point, right? My mom discovers that I've got lice at this point. And so we are so broke, like every penny counts at that point, that we couldn't even afford lice treatment. So my mom asks my dad to siphon out gasoline from a parked car. And so he does. He siphons out like a jar of gasoline from a parked car. She does what every foreigner mom would do. She takes me to the big grassy area of the complex. And in Armenian, she tells me to double over, take off my shirt, double over, close my eyes, and she starts pouring gasoline on my head and washing my hair with gasoline. And I remember seeing little feet around me, realizing those are the neighborhood kids, and they're probably thinking like, this lady's about to light them on fire.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's how she dealt with lice, man, because we couldn't afford lice treatment. It was just the fondest memory now.
Isn't it crazy that, my grandparents, for example, have got so many like treatments and wives' tales and superstitions and stuff like that. Is there anything that you've taken from your Armenian culture and put it into your children too? Obviously not the gasoline on the head, of course.
Right. Today they call Child Protective Services. Man, probably the food, right? Like the food. My wife really adopted to the culture. She's a great cook, and so she cooks a lot of Armenian food, and my kids love it. But in terms of other like remedies or cultural stuff, not really.
Got you.
Not really. I'm so Americanized. I was 6 years old when we came here, so I'm more American than Armenian. Certainly have not forgotten my Armenian roots.
Yes.
And I'll never forget where I came from and who I am. But I believe that if you're an immigrant, you're in this country. 1, come into this country legally. 2, contribute to it. 3, become a citizen. Congratulations. You did a couple years ago, right? Or maybe
Actually,
a few months.
A couple months ago.
That's right.
15 years.
That's right. Yeah, me too, man.
Should have just swum.
Yeah. but then contribute to this country, you know, like don't just take. And so there was really, where we live, it's all American and English speaking people. I'm not in Glendale, California, where it's all Armenians. I'm in Chino Hills, California, and so my kids, they know the culture, they know the food, but they don't really need to know anything beyond that.
Got you. With me coming over here, obviously at the age I was at, I've worked hard to make sure that I blend the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Like my daughter will know where daddy's from. In fact, my wife, as you've met, my wife is absolutely tremendous. She speaks more to my mum than me, which is shameful. But she really makes sure that my mum doesn't miss out on anything. Yeah. Absolutely. Every day she speaks to her through text, FaceTimes mainly. But as you can hear, I've pridefully held on to this accent because for me, it's part of me. You know, guys that have come from different countries, they've been here 2 weeks, they start sounding American.
Yep.
This is part of me. This is part of my DNA. Both my kids are named Welsh names. Adiana is Woman of Beauty, and Maxon is Greatest. So that 2 Welsh.
Maxon is Greatest?
Greatest.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, Woman of Beauty and Greatest. Yeah. So to me, my culture is everything. You know, it's been a massive... actually, my culture pushes me more than any you know, platform. I've got a lot of international Welsh players to see what I'm doing over here, you know, different celebrities from that region of the world. I'm kind of flying the flag. And it was...
You have to represent them well, and you certainly don't want to let them down. And I feel the same way about the Armenian culture. Like, you know, I could either be a shit bag of a human.
Absolutely.
And further allow people to say, there you go, there's another foreigner that came to this country. He's from Armenia, and he's just... you know, literally just raping this country for everything. Or I could be a great human that sets an example of, wow, look at that Armenian, right?
You've told that tale tremendously because, as you've said, you know where you've come from. You know what your dad had to do to come over to this country, chase that American dream. You know, you've literally dumpster dived for foods. Yep. And now, through your own work ethic, earned, not given, you're able to, you know, dine in the finest restaurants if you're choosing. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the American dream.
That is.
It truly is.
Yeah. And people think that the American dream is dead. They think it's unattainable now. I think you and I are great examples of that. So. And if someone says, well, yeah, but you guys came years ago, my argument would be this, that if you truly want freedom and money, which is really what the American dream allows for, you can create a product or service and you can market it free on all the social media platforms. And their algorithm is so powerful that they will start finding you more eyeballs on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. And then using your phone that everyone has, you can make how-to videos. You can create content for free. And then using your phone, you can make a free WordPress site to actually make a sales page. Your same phone will access PayPal for free, where you can put a button in there, and they will take 2.9% of every dollar that they process for you and put into your bank account. And the American dream is literally, the barrier to the American dream is lower than ever. The reason it's not as attainable as it used to be is because people have gotten so comfortable, so complacent, and so entitled, and that is a different conversation. But the American dream is more available. If I came to America today at 6 years old, I would acquire my wealth even faster and with less hardship because there's so much access that's either free or next to free.
I couldn't agree more.
Right?
The only thing I had as my social media was a magazine.
Yeah.
And my goal was to work myself into the magazine. And then when you've done the shoots, you have to take months, 3 months actually to the date. It
right.
would take.
In the meantime,
yeah.
In the meantime, you're waiting for your shoot to make it to the magazine so that you'll get some notoriety, you'll make some money from it.
Yeah.
And by the way, those magazines, every single one of them have a gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. Social media doesn't. Go and start an account, and you add value to humanity, and then you can extract money to put into your bank account.
Is that some advice that you would give to somebody who's kind of on that edge? You know, if somebody's listening to this podcast being like, oh, you know, I don't know where to start. You've just given them turnkey advice on just starting up your first ever business.
Literally, that's it. Like, every single person has a solution to a problem. Like, every person is good at doing something that solves a problem. And people are willing to give money to that person who will provide the solution. Mm-hmm. So if you, whether it's, you know, maybe you're a good coach, fitness coach, you know how to help people build muscle, you know how to help people burn fat, you know how to help people build their glutes, you know how to help people dial in their nutrition, develop a better mindset, find their next significant other, whatever it is, right? Dress better. Whatever the thing is that you're good at that solves a problem, people are willing to part ways with their money to get the solution to that problem. And if their arguments, so let me just take a moment to crush the secondary conversation that your audience is having right now in their head. They're saying, yeah, Bedros, all that is good, and I do have a solution to a problem. However, it's congested. There's thousands of people doing what I do as well. And I go, wrong. It's not, it's congested for the mediocre, for the average, for the amateurs. You get so good at storytelling, at orating, at articulating, at putting content out on a consistent basis that you climb to the top, because there's so much room here at the top. It is not competitive where I am. It is not congested where I am. And if their conversation is, yeah, but I don't have the gift of communication and gab like you do, Bedros, let me remind them that English is a second language for me.
That's what I say.
Let me remind them that I've got ADD and OCD. And they told me I've got all types of learning disabilities, and they wanted to put me on Ritalin in school. And my parents were like, yeah, put them on whatever you guys want, you know, right? They didn't give a shit. And they just figured it's calories, and we needed calories, even if it's in the form of Ritalin, right? And so, like, I'm here to destroy any objection that anyone has about creating a business that can sustain a really cool lifestyle. And the barrier to entry is low, but it does take effort. It does take the ability to orate, communicate, and draw a word picture. And if you can't do that, you might want to watch some free YouTube videos that teaches you how to communicate, how to have charisma, how to be able to tell a story, because that is how we buy, man. Once we, like, there's a lot of Mr. Olympias, but when I meet Flex Lewis and I get to hear his story, his origin, where he came from, the fact that you raced pigeons, for crying out loud. Like, when we first met, your audience should know this, we were in Utah, right?
Yeah, we had a great conversation, by the way.
Yeah, I thought you were pulling my leg when you're like, yeah, man, I had like competitive race pigeons. I'm like, how the fuck do you race birds?
By the way, I think this is an exclusive on my podcast, right? Is this yeah, Tyus? Yeah, I think
your audience doesn't know that you race pigeons, bro.
No, I keep these little.
Oh my God, you got to tell them how awesome.
The floor is yours.
Okay, well, so fill in the gaps where I miss out, but
okay.
So there we are. We're both speaking at an event in Utah. Dan Fleischman, our mutual friend, introduced us, and I'm like, holy, you know, and immediately, okay, I see the accent. You're an immigrant, 7-time Mr. Olympia. Got it. This man's got work ethic. He's got himself all dialed in and kept up, which tells me a lot of how you do anything is how you do everything. And then I don't know how the conversation changed to hobbies, but you said back at home you were raising pigeons, and I'm like, okay, this guy's like pulling my leg. He's also got a great sense of humor. And as you went on to tell me more and more, you would race him across the English Channel, if I'm not mistaken.
You have a hell of a memory.
Oh, man. Bro, when I like and respect someone, yes, of course.
Thank you.
But look how easily, like, now whatever you sell, I would buy because I know you, like you, and trust you, right? It's as simple as that. There's a lot of Mr. Olympias out there, and I know them, but you are someone that I've connected with because you have done a great job in making that connection for me, right? And so because of that, when you say, hey man, Bedros, this is what you need in your gym, I don't question it. I go, Flex said so, and so I'm gonna buy that piece of equipment, put it in my gym, or those shoes, or whatever, that can of Monster Energy or whatever. So anyway, but the part I want you to tell them is, when these pigeons, man, when they would go so low to the water, what would happen to them?
You'd have a roll. So just to pay, fill in the gaps here. So myself and Bedros had, we were speaking at Andrew Cordell's event.
Yes.
And we were upstairs in the green room. I believe there was myself, you, there was Chuck Liddell was there.
Yes.
There was a hodgepodge of great,
a lot of greats,
great people. But I always get drawn in to the best people in the room. I'm not just saying it because, you're sitting opposite me, but I came off stage, you turned to me and you said, I believe, again, I'm paraphrasing you, could be completely different, but it was great speech. And I was like, oh, thank you. And we connected. We went into some great conversations. I think there was a few people floating around.
Yeah.
What's the gentleman now who's, he was in Entourage. He was there too.
Oh, shit. Ari.
Yes.
He was Ari Gold. I forget.
Yes.
Jeremy Piven.
He was there too.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the guy, we're all huddled around Bedros laughing and putting our stories in. And somehow the pigeon story came up.
Yeah.
And you were blown away. So I was like, okay. You were like, tell me more. And I was like, I don't want to talk about this kind of thing. He's like, no, you got to double down. So we started talking about how you raise them. So in short, when I got into the sport, I found out straight away I was going to be the youngest guy by 40 years.
Right. Because it's an old man sport.
It's an old man sport. And these guys done it since the war. So that's where the correlation is, because these pigeons are used for carrying messages from the trenches. So a lot of these guys brought that same mentality back. A lot of these guys, these old heads, you and I, align with, these World War II vets that fought for our country, my country and your country and everybody else's country. They've come back and they've, again, going off the point there, see, dangerous. They were surrounded by me, but again, their moral compasses I learned a lot from. So I had a paper route, and one of the guys that I delivered to had pigeons. He was not very far from the house. So I'd seen these birds just going around. I got drawn in. I was breeding parrots at the time.
Okay.
And I scaled up to parrots.
Okay, so you were in the feathered creatures.
I was in
terms of that realm.
At that point in time, I wasn't chasing the other birds. That's why I got out of that. That's why I got out of the pigeons, to be truthfully honest with you. But
that was so good.
But my first, I'll paint a big story so the viewers can understand how I got into this, in this completion. I first started my business at a young age with the finches. So I had a paper round. I realized that, oh my God, if I get these two birds from the pet shop, put them together, they create birds, I'll sell them back. That turned into a very lucrative business for me at a very young age. My mum and dad, I kept it away from them at the garden shed. They didn't even know what was going on back there.
What age are we talking about here?
14.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
so
14.
That's young.
Yeah, 14. Actually, hold on a minute. No, maybe 12, because I had my paper on. I mean, who's doing the paper on?
What an enterprising young man you were.
11, 12. So then I got from the finches into the parakeets into the parrots. That's where the money is, hand taming them and selling them off. But then I was like, let's go complete different direction here. And long story short, I started to go over to this guy's house every Saturday morning. And these birds would come in like bullets. So they're trained. They're homing pigeons. The word they're homing. Whatever they let out, they are, by hell or high water, going to make it home. Think of that mentality.
Yeah.
They are going to go home to their nest, to their family, to their hen. So you would send off the cockbirds, and these guys.
What are the cockbirds?
The males.
The males.
Yeah. I know you were expecting a different reaction there, bro.
Yeah.
You were expecting my flight.
And how big are those cocks anyway?
Well, I do have a hole in my. I do have a hole in my pants. As Titus loves to remind me about. But yeah, in short, I started really getting into it, and I realized that I had a little side hustle going on. So the first race, I came second, and then I started blitzing all these old guys. But what I done was, these Belgium fanciers were the best in the business, and they were giving their birds creatine, glutamine, all kinds of vitamins. Back then, they were so advanced, and you think of the mentality of treating them like athletes.
Yep.
So what I done was, I linked up with a local haulage company that went a certain direction, because they all get released southwest. So as they're going across England, I would have these guys in the trucking company drop them off periodically at certain places. So these guys were trained, and they pick up geographical landmarks. So if you let them off every, 10, 20 miles, they'll go in the homing direction that they say that they haven't discovered why they're going in that direction yet.
Right.
But something to do with the placement of, I believe it's the sun and whatever else. So they're flying into X direction.
Right.
And they would get home. But again, I remember winning the second ever show, and everybody's like, oh, well, dog, what did you do to win? And what a fluke. Congratulations, young kid. Third time, not so much.
Yeah.
And anyway,
well, now you're a
up,
threat to them at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
But picking up on that, and I trained these birds, and they were savages. These birds could not wait to be trained, and these birds could not wait to race. So it's all crazy that all these little mentality things that I've even picked up from a bird.
Yeah.
And how, his mentality is to get back to his home, come hell and high water now, is being positioned into my heart in other things too. But picking up on our Utah conversation, when I told you that, you were like, oh my God, we got to talk more about this.
Well, bro, the part that I was literally belly laughing was, you were telling me how these birds, like you just explained, you feed them, you literally put them on supplements and you train them, and they weren't cheap.
No.
But then these some of these would fly so low on the water.
Yes.
That the wave, if I'm not mistaken, like just the
rogue wave.
Yeah.
Would wipe them out.
Would just wipe them right out and kill a bird.
Yeah, done. And you could have
one of your athletes ends up dying.
Yeah, and some of these birds from other fanciers were a lot of money.
I bet.
I could Tyus, do you mind, as you're in the backdrop there, Googling world's most expensive pigeon, just so we can blow some people's minds. But yeah, and then another thing I want to mention also is, and run into something else. You said to me and said, I would always do business with a bodybuilder. That passing comment that you said hit me hard, because bodybuilders have a certain stereotype, and I fought hard not to become that stereotype. You'd never see me walking around with my top off, in a tank top, in a singlet. I'd have a pair of shorts on and a T-shirt. All throughout my career, I've matched against that. 1.9 million, world's most expensive pigeon.
Holy hell. Now imagine just a little ripple across the English Channel killing that thing.
Gone.
Wow.
But again, fighting against the stereotype. So to hear something like that from you, that hit me hard, and I was like, wow. Because bodybuilders, they don't realize, but they're entrepreneurs themselves. And hear me out when I say this. You have an athlete, again, just like a pigeon, come hell or high water, they are going to do that show on that date. Let's just say July 1st. We're in January. They will put an off-season together. They will put a pre-contest together. But it's all mapped out. Hitting things at certain points. Mentality changes, diet changes. It all comes part of it. Injuries, all part of it. But they are going to make that date. Yeah. And then they turn to me and say, but Flex, I'd stop them. But you just went through this with an injury. You went through... Oh, but I'm not confident on camera. Do you think I was? Public speaking, if I found out about this was part of bodybuilding, I wouldn't have probably done bodybuilding. As if standing up on stage and posing trunks wasn't enough. I then had to tell a speech on how I done it. Petrified. Right. I was like, oh my God. But this, through reps and sets, has now become something that I truly enjoy. I mean, heck, doing this podcast with you, if I told my 15-year-old self that was Jack the lad in the room with the boys, but outside of the social comforts, I was kind of like, I wasn't that guy. But no, it's part of the brand, and I don't really think about it. It's because of reps and sets, and it goes back to what you're saying. That is everything in life. And just to pick up the question, bodybuilders can make great entrepreneurs because the DNA is already there.
By the way, at any given time, when a bodybuilder is in prep, they typically have demands of them. So there's always some stream of income they have to do, whether they have a career, a business, or whatever. And then their other full-time job is prep. And so when you think about a great leader, when I think about building Fit Body Bootcamp, our franchise, it took being able to fight battles on many fronts as I'm leading sales teams, marketing teams, franchise support teams. And if you can multitask under the pressure of depletion while still making money and putting your best foot forward, like that tells me this person has so many of the traits necessary to become a great entrepreneur, business partner, but because they count themselves out, they never make it. If they just realize that what they were doing, all those sets and reps, as you said, are literally the foundation of a great entrepreneur, man, any bodybuilder, I would bet my money on if they flipped that switch and realized, okay, I'm that guy. I'm now willing to put myself on the camera in front of social media on a consistent basis. I'll bet on that guy any day.
That's consistency, right, Bedros? It's just doing it when you don't want to do it.
That's it. And soon it becomes a habit. So when you don't want to do it, it doesn't even factor into the math anymore, because once something's a habit, you just do it. Like, There's probably nights that I don't want to brush my teeth, but I brush my teeth anyway. There's probably mornings I don't want to brush my teeth, but I brush my teeth anyway. It's a habit. So the factor of I don't feel like it no longer is part of the equation.
Why do you think men have got soft?
I think men have gotten soft for a multitude of reasons. One of those reasons are life has gotten too comfortable, right? There's a phrase that says strong men create good times create weak men create bad times create strong men. That is very true. And we've had good times for so long that men have gotten comfortable, complacent. They have allowed. So that's factor number one. Factor number two is over the last decade and a half, maybe even 2 decades, there's been a constant and deliberate messaging of a narrative that says that everything that you are as a man, ambition, desire to achieve, to conquer, by the way, like everything, to protect, to provide, to acquire things, to have legacy, to build a statue and monument to yourself, metaphorically, like back then conquerors and leaders used to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Today, the modern version of that is, look, we're in Dragon's Lair. Like we are in your gym. This is your legacy. We are on your podcast. When you and I are long gone, this podcast will live on. Like you're building a legacy. Everything that we are as men is being told that it's toxic, which is not. Ambition is not toxic. To have strength and courage is not toxic. To be able to think for yourself is not toxic. To be able to want cars and money and financial freedom and sovereignty and to be able to build a legacy and have impact is not toxic. In fact, I'll tell you what is a toxic man. A toxic man is someone who is dependent on the system. Who is the system? The system is the opposition. The opposition consists of big government. The opposition consists of mainstream media, who is the voice and the mouthpiece of big government. And big government is led by the military-industrial complex, number one, the pharmaceutical complex organization, industries, number two, and the big food conglomerates that process everything and make us sick. They make us sick. They create the medicines and the vaccines that mask the issues caused by the food that's overly processed and poisoned, genetically and chemically modified. And then, of course, war is constantly waged because war is a big money machine. And this is how that works. And all 3 of these big organizations fund the politicians and keep them in power. And they use mainstream media to separate us, to segregate us, to make us think that because of color or sexual preference or financial status or whether you decide to get the jab or not, that we are now evil or not, that we're supposed to hate each other. We don't hate each other as much as they say they do. We're not as scared as much as they say we are. They will amplify any little thing to create separation and segregation because men are not meant to be a lone wolf. Mm-hmm. They want us to be lone wolves because that is when we are most susceptible to ending our own lives. That is when we're most susceptible to being dependent on the government. Because when we become tribal and connect with each other, dude, you literally have lived in a gym. I've grown up in a gym myself. You walk into a gym, I don't care if you're black, white, Chinese, I don't care if you're old or young, I don't care if you're gay, straight, lesbian, transgender, or identify as a unicorn. If I need a spot and you look jacked, I'm going to ask you. And if you need one, you're going to ask me because in the gym is the best metaphor of the world.
True.
Like we all respect each other. Like I can see a dude who identifies as a unicorn squatting a good amount of weight and be like, that mother got the it factor. Like I want to know him, right? Yeah. That's how the world is outside of the gym. The problem is the media doesn't say, hey, inside the gym, you guys should hate each other. If you do squats and you're a good bencher and you're a good deadlifter, you guys should all hate each other. Yeah. Imagine if they did that. That's what the world is. They use media and now social media to put a narrative out to separate us. And here's why. If I said, hey, Flex, you and I are going to create this army of warriors, and then we're going to go invade Canada. We're going straight north, and we're going to invade Canada, right through Vancouver. Dude, if we put together our army of like savage warriors, we're not worried about the elderly men in Canada to put up a fight against us. We're not worried about the women and children of Canada to put up a fight against us. The only thing, we're not worried about old people. The only thing we'd be worried about is able-bodied, strong, courageous men to put up a fight against us and not allow us to take over their country. But if I said, hey, man, before we go and invade, let's take a few years to demoralize them, to make them feel toxic, to strip them of their masculinity. And then now we don't have to go fight them. We can just go take it away from them because they feel so docile. They're declawed and defanged. Now they're not even going to put up a fight. That's the best way to take over a country. That's what they're trying to do with us. And we as men must realize that soft is the enemy of masculinity. And we have no room for soft in our lives.
What have you been doing to make sure that these strong values and things that you align with have now a schooling of such? Because I know that you've got a lot of different charities, you've got a lot of foundations and stuff which preach exactly what we're talking about. Of course, you've got the podcast as well, which we'll link down below. But I know that you have really taken it upon yourself to make sure that the next generation is you know, having this knowledge and isn't skewed to the media.
Correct. And I believe every single one of us that are in a position where we have now created financial freedom for ourselves, we have woken up and we're free thinkers, we're sovereign. We realize that there is an opposition, there is a system that tries to keep us within the system because that is the best way to keep us. They want us employed, they want us taxed, they want inflation to take away your money, they want taxes to take away your money, they want interest rates to take away your money, because when they do, you will constantly be dependent on the man, and you will always encourage the man to create more rules, to literally tighten the noose around your neck. That's what these laws are. The fact that Texas recently, and I'm glad it happened, but Governor Abbott of Texas recently signed a bill saying that that those women who are born as men but transition to women in Texas cannot participate in female sports. Ugh. Bro, it breaks my heart that has to be a bill, a state bill. That should be common sense.
That's exactly common sense.
We should have exercised our voices so much. Like a dude who was like number 500 as a swimmer decides to tuck his cock and duct tape it to his leg, wear a wig. And I'm all for it, man. Look, I worked at Disneyland. Disneyland has the highest population of gay employees. And those gay employees were so good to me, and I was so good to them, man, that I worked. One of them helped me get a job as a bouncer at a gay bar. And when I did, and skinheads would come to gay bash, every night I was fighting those skinheads along with all the other bouncers, making sure that every gay man and woman in that nightclub would make it to their cars safely. I have no problem with the LGBTQ, XYZ, LMNOPO. I have no problem with that. Like I said, identify as a unicorn if you want. What I do have a problem with, though, is the fact that we have to create a bill that should be just common sense. We created yet another law, which technically tightens the noose around our necks. I want less laws. I want less government. I want more freedom, more sovereignty. I want people to keep more of their money. And so, yes, that's great that Governor Abbott did that in Texas, but it's unfortunate because it should be common sense, and all of us should be like, hey, that dude who tucked his cock, wore a wig, and was number 500 in the men's swim team now crushed every female record. These women can't even say anything about it because, God forbid, they say anything, they're canceled immediately. So they have to go, you know, accept their loss with grace, and go, congratulations, you won. Bro, that's up. And you see that in every sport. So anyway, all that to say that we have a role and a responsibility. So when I felt called during the pandemic, I saw the acceleration of the tearing down of masculinity. I saw the acceleration of the demoralization of this is the last and final free country on this planet, the United States, where you and I live in right now. There is no other country that has a document that protects freedom, sovereignty, liberties, and they are very quickly eroding all of those things. They're encroaching on our rights and freedoms. And so with that in mind, I stopped the Empire podcast. I set out to do the Bedros Keuilian show. I fought it for 6 months saying other people are fighting this battle. I'm an entrepreneur. Why should I be fighting this battle? Call it God, call it the universe, call it consciousness, call it source. Man, every day during those 6 months, I was anxious, I was depressed, I was in a funk, and I couldn't figure out why. Family was good, money was good, business was good, but I knew that I was supposed to be in front of the camera talking about this stuff on my new show, and that I failed to launch it for 6 months. And when I gave Joan, who's outside of this, the other side of this wall, my assistant, I said, hey, Joan, create a new studio, black backdrop, you know, gold lighting, and we don't need a second seat. It's just going to be me and the camera, and I'm going to talk whatever's on my heart to men, young men, middle-aged men, old men, and I want to help them develop self-mastery, meaning, and money. Because if they do those things, they will win their sovereignty. They will get back in the gym and rebuild their body and lose their fat little titties and gain confidence and be able to become a formidable force against the opposition. And so not only is my show dedicated to that, and certainly women benefit from my show because it's all about self-mastery and self-development, right? But I speak to men specifically. But I also created two programs. One's called The Project, the Modern Day Night Project. It's a 75-hour experience for men. One of my instructors is a Navy SEAL. Two of them are Marines, an MMA fighter, and myself. And we put these men who come and go through this experience through physical, mental, and emotional torture, but during those 75 hours together, we create a brotherhood. We get them to bond, and we help them overcome whatever traumas, limiting beliefs that they've had. You know, I talk about it openly on stage, so I don't mind sharing it here. I was molested as a kid. Between the ages of 4 and 6, I was molested as a child in Armenia, and by 2 older boys. That me up, man. I didn't trust men growing up. I didn't feel lovable. I always, all my relationships suffered from it. I didn't want to share it with anyone because I didn't want you to think that I'm broken or disgusting somehow. And so I kept that to myself all the way up until 35 years old. Wow. When I had a massive panic attack. It was such a bad panic attack that I thought I was having a heart attack and I was dying, dude. And I share that with you because that was a turning point for me. I realized I need to do something to deal with this trauma that I've experienced. So I created the project after I did the healing. And I think we talked about this earlier. Like when you become the man or woman that you're supposed to be, that you would respect, the man or woman that you love, the man or woman that you admire, the man or woman that you would want your children to model after, you become that person by working on yourself, doing the self-work. Once you become that person, then you gift that person to the world. Like your responsibility and duty is to gift your highest self to the world. That's what you've done on stage, by the way. You have inspired millions because of that. I do the same on my platform in the entrepreneurial world. And so the project is for men who want to overcome their limiting beliefs, their traumas, create a brotherhood, and heal and grow. And then we have the Squire program, which is a father and son experience that's 12 hours long. It's a rite of passage for boys 13 to 16 years old who go through this awesome experience with their dads. And this is their rite of passage into masculinity, into being men. And here's why. People go, why do they need that? First of all, cultures for thousands of years had that. Now we don't, which is part of the opposition's agenda. Mm-hmm. Because if they can keep young men confused and dopey and dumb and dependent, they're not going to be a threat. And that's what they want. They want to make the next generation so soft that they can easily take the country away from them, right? I think it was Ronald Reagan that said we're just one generation away from losing our freedoms and constitutional rights. So with that in mind, I created that rite of passage experience called the Squire program, as in knights had squires, and the job of the knight was to mentor that squire as the squire cleaned his armor and tended to the horse and practiced sword fighting with him. Everything that a man is supposed to do, that knight's duty was to teach that squire, and the squire's duty was to be of service to that knight, to learn chivalry, to become chivalrous, to become a gentleman, to become courageous, to develop mastery of skills, and to join a brotherhood, and to know that I'm going to draw a line, and if you cross this line, you're not going to see the gentleman anymore. You're going to see the savage, and that is what's missing, and I am hell-bent on bringing that back.
You've said many times 2 words, a savage and a servant.
Yes.
And that hits hard with me, my friend.
Yeah.
And that is true to form, you know. I do, you know, not to jump over this, but that, you breaking down that with the squire and the knight. Yeah. That's like, you know, old school apprenticeship.
That's how it should be, and that's what we need. And here's why. Yeah. As a young man, did something happen to you, to me, to tell us that you're no longer a boy, you're a man? Absolutely not. Nothing happens.
Just life.
Just life, right? And so we need our dads. We need male figures that we trust to let us know that, hey, you now have a seat at the table where me and the tribe of men will forge you into a man by teaching you the way of man, right? Whereas for a young girl, there's something very physical that happens that says you're a woman. There comes a moment in time where she has her menstrual cycle, and mom goes, honey, you're now a woman.
Yeah, that's
You're bleeding. That's your menstrual cycle. You have boobs. That's very physical. You could see it. Yeah. You are now a woman. That doesn't happen for a man. And so we must develop the skills, traits, behaviors, habits, beliefs that a man has.
And when did you start putting this together with your son? Showing him the traits of what you believe a man should be.
Yeah. So one of the greatest gifts I got was from my wife's uncle, Uncle John. When my wife was pregnant with Andrew, Andrew's 17 now, so almost 18 years ago. When my wife was pregnant with Andrew, he gave me a book written by a gentleman named Robert, I forget his last name, but the book was titled Raising a Modern Day Knight.
Wow.
Yeah. And I read the title and I was like, holy shit.
This is like full circle.
Full circle, right. And so I'm reading this book and it's talking about how teaching your son to be a modern day knight, you know, to be courageous, to have strength, to have mastery of skills, to be able to control his thoughts and emotions. Because if a woman is emotional, what is she going to do? Cry, talk to her friends. When a man loses control of emotions, that is how we have mass shootings. That is how they'll take the car and drive it right into a group of people. That is how a man cannot lose control of his thoughts and emotions. He must have mastery over his thoughts, feelings, and emotions at all times, right? And so this book talked about all that, to be a savage and a servant. And then it said, when your son comes of age, between the ages of 12, 13, 14 years old, put him through an experience that then tells him that this is your rite of passage, just like a young girl having her first period. And the author suggested, you know, creating this obstacle course where maybe you bring the most trusted men that you trust, that share your core values and morals, maybe some uncles, some neighbor friends, etc., and saying, son, these are the men that I trust. We're now going to pour into you. This is what we would wanted to know when we were 13, 14 years old, as we developed into men. And after we pour into you, I'm going to blindfold you. I'm going to go stand on the other side of this obstacle course. And the obstacle course, the way they described it was, he said, you know, imagine having broken glass on the ground and rusty nails sticking out of 2x4s and razor wire kind of placed on this obstacle course. And imagine it being like a 40-yard obstacle course. And he's blindfolded and he has to just use his hearing. And dad's on the other side saying, son, take 2 steps forward. Now 1 step to your left. Now pivot 30 degrees to your right. Okay, now take 2 more steps forward. And really what it's teaching you is your dad, who's got life experience, amongst all the chaos of life, if you just listen to your dad who's got life experience, he will get you through the troubles of life. That's what those obstacles signify. They're metaphorical. And the idea is that you develop a gut. Dad mentors you, and the men that dad trusts mentor you, pour into you over the next several years to develop a gut where you can guide yourself through the chaos of life and make the right decisions without getting stabbed by rusty nails or cut by razor wire or, you know, walking over broken glass. And so I did this for my son. And when I told people about it, they said, man, I'd like to do that for my son. And when enough men, and I would just say, hey, go read this book. They go, well, is there any way you can organize something? And I always feel like men have always, like, again, like I said, full circle, come to me and ask me if I can help, if I could just advise, if I could listen. And so when enough men told me, like, man, if you could organize something, I'd like to do this for my son, that's where I created the Squire program. And now we've got one in North Carolina, California, Texas, Phoenix, and my goal is to have one in every state. And they're run by great men, and it's just a wonderful experience, and we're bringing the rite of passage back to humanity.
Well, if there's any option or ability, or I'd have the honor in doing something here in Las Vegas, because truly that aligns so much with me. And when I'm listening to that, you know, you've got, maybe you're having a, you know, you got a teenage son, or you get into that point where there's rebellion.
Yeah.
This just nips in the bud, the bonding, the relationship, the trust. So many different things that will come out from this weekend. or the experience, shall I say. Yeah. And it reminds me of a story that I was told of a boy becoming a man. And I'm sure you may have heard this, where a young man it's a tribe somewhere in Africa. They're taken out to the woods, and this gentleman had his son sit on a rock. I think it was for overnight or for 12 hours, or it's probably like 12 hours overnight, and blindfolded in silence. You could hear all the animals, all the snap branches, the whatever, everything that would freak you out. Oof. And his goal was to sit there in silence until sunrise. So he felt the heat of the sunrise. Yeah. And when he took his blindfold off, his dad was sitting there and was with him all along.
Ooh, God, I just got goosebumps all over, man. That is crazy.
And his dad sat there in silence, just observing. And I think that's a great metaphor for life, because, as I've had my dad, you've had your dad, I'm there now for my kids. Yeah. But one thing both of us can probably agree on, our dads worked way too much to get us to where we are right now.
Yeah, I agree.
And I refuse to become my dad, because right now, I have a lot of options, a lot of ability to do whatever I want in terms of chasing goals. I have that mentality, as do you. But there's only so much bandwidth we have in the day. And if we don't have the foundations of our family at the core, we get lost in the sauce. And then you can just exchange the monetary, what we're getting paid for, what we're doing, to becoming, our dad's working the three different jobs. My dad doing the 12 doubles.
Right. That's exactly right. And by the way, that was a different generation, and our kids will take, so what we have done, you and I and others of our generation, is we've taken the best that we've gained from our dads, applied them to our life, and then the areas that they could have done better, we've improved on. And our kids will do the same. They will take the best of what we gave them, and they will take that, and then they will improve on the areas that we maybe had some shortcomings. Yeah. And that is what we want to do, right? Because they came from a different generation, and the generation before them was just, dealing with the Great Depression. And to them, mentoring, I got to get food on the table. I got to have a roof over your head. There's no time to mentor you, right? And so every generation has a responsibility to the one coming up behind them. And if we look at it that way, then we go, man, I'm not just on this journey by myself on this planet. I'm a role model, not only to my kids, but to humanity. And if people saw themselves as a role model to humanity, they would take their duty as a man or a woman more serious, instead of just, let me mindlessly screen suck on social media, feel FOMO for this bullshit fake lifestyle that people are portraying, and instead put my own pictures up there pretending like I'm enjoying life when I'm really suffering in silence, right? Like, there's such greater meaning to life other than screen sucking and feeling like you're missing out on shit.
How would you, as a coach to the stars, let's be honest, Bedros.
I've got some badass coaching.
I'm not even, let's just say that the people that I'm privy of knowing that you coach, some obviously we can't put on camera, are the highest of the highest, the best CEOs, the athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs. You are coaching the coaches. Yeah. And for you to go full circle from coming to this country as, as an immigrant, learning the English, to having this incredible and vast knowledge, additionally to the vocabulary that you have as a second language, is truly a testament to itself. Yet now you're around these high flyers. How hard is it for you to, obviously each client is different, right? Each person is different that you're dealing with. There's egos, there's whatever. Yeah. How do you break down the barriers? Giving me day one to then this epiphany that happens.
Yeah. And as you said, and I've got literally the coaches who coach people in every category of life you can think of, from making money to all the blue check marks people follow, like Super Bowl winning NFL athletes, to literally every type of military warfighter from special operations community, from the Army Rangers, Delta, to Navy SEALs, to Marine MARSOC, to senators, congressmen. I've got some of the greatest coaching clients to billionaires, literally billionaires, who say, I do not need help in my business. I need help in getting my shit together because I'm a walking disaster, even though I make billions, which is a testament to life is about money, meaning, and self-mastery. So a man that's got money, billions, billionaire, like he's got multiple options for private jets that he can fly on that day. Without self-mastery and meaning, he's got nothing, and he's on the edge of taking his own life. And so I've got the good fortune to coach people of that caliber. The very first thing we do during a half-day session is I tell them, look, in this war room, it's the conference room at HQ, I call it the war room. I go, look, there's a camera, but no audio, just a camera. In case you attack me, we're going to have evidence, and that's just breaking the ice, right? Because we just have cameras everywhere.
We have several in here, too. Just in case I say the wrong thing.
Right. I go, listen, we got water and drinks in the fridge. We got snacks around the table. You're welcome to use your audio recorder to record anything you want. Everything that we talk about here stays in this room and goes to my deathbed with me. I don't have a pillow talk conversation with my spouse about it. I don't share it with my team, and I'm not here to judge you, and I don't plan on writing a book. So with that said, the more you can give me, the more I can serve you. Otherwise, you've just given me $100,000 for a year of coaching, and that's it. And I'm grateful for that money because I'll put it to good use, but you won't get the value from it unless there's full vulnerability. So whether they hire me for business coaching, to scale a new company, to be able to sell their company, to develop a platform because they've done so much in life and now they're ready to go public. There's people that are making hundreds of millions behind the scenes and they're ready to go public, and they'll hire me and go, how do I create a personal brand? And so all that to say that I fully let them know that I'm taking everything to my deathbed, number one. Number two, soon as they give me a little hint of what the problem is, I've been such a big up in my life, Flex, like addictions, check, I've had it. Self-defeating beliefs, I've had it and overcome it. Coming to this America and being a foreigner, not understanding the language, the culture, any of it, I've had it. So I've checked off every box. I've made money and I've lost it. I've built businesses and I've sold them. I've run all types of team, and I've got now CEOs that work for me and with me. And so with that, I tell them every chink in my armor. Like, I'm not Superman. I'm the guy that walks around with so much kryptonite around me that I've just become immune to it, right? And so with that, they're able to, and I don't know what it is, and going back to what we said, why did all these men at LA Fitness, when I was just a goofball personal trainer, feel like they can come up to me in between my sessions with my clients and just felt comfortable to talk to me and share their life's problems with me? Today, I get paid an obscene amount of money because of the track record of experience, life experience, and business experience I have to share that. And so I took a superpower that I discovered some 25 years ago and built on it over time and experience. And I'm able to serve these men who are able to serve humanity at such a mass scale. But I let them know that I'm the biggest up on the planet. So there's not a step that you're going to say that I'm going to be shocked by. You've been abused. I've been molested and abused, like big deal. You're still lovable. I still love you. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you, but you might have limiting beliefs and I can help you overcome it. And if I can't do it myself, I can point you in the right direction. And so I put all ego aside. I help them bring their wall down, and we do a year's worth of deep work, and we typically get 3 to 5 years of self-mastery results from it.
Is there any stories that you can talk about that that pridefully that you've seen somebody just changing, caterpillar to butterfly?
Yeah. Two stories, and both of these gentlemen I've gotten permission from. So one guy was from the special operations community. I can't say what branch, but he was from the special operations community. And he felt that he's got a curse on him. His whole life he's got a curse on him, and that curse followed him, according to him, into the military. And in special operations, he lost some close friends. He kind of felt that he could have maybe done something differently to not lose those friends. But he got out of special operations and started a business. That business started to grow. He realized that unlike the military, you can't just tell people what to do. It's a different type of leadership and management of personalities. These aren't all type A, highly strung, tightly wound people. Like, these are regular people that you have to manage. And he was like, holy, I don't know how to manage regular people. And so that's where he hired me. And he goes, I got to tell you something. Now that I've paid you this money, I'm cursed. Everything I do either fails, or if I'm going to succeed, I have to work 10 times harder. And he was convinced that there's this curse that he has. And he goes, so that's how it's been in business. And he told me all of his life stories, etc. And here's the deal. We tend to find evidence. If we have a belief system, we will then look in the world and find evidence to reinforce that belief system.
100%.
Right? I said, hey, I believe you that you're cursed. And this is one of my little,
No.
yeah. I go, you know what? I believe that you're cursed. And his eyes were just turned into saucers. I go, so it's probably going to take a lot longer to work with you than others. So I'm letting him believe that I believe this. I go, however, is there anything good that ever happened to you in your life that came with ease and you were surprised? Let's start with your childhood. And he listed something off. Now let's start in the military. And he listed off like he was the best swimmer in this one particular evolution. And he listed other things off. And then we listed off business and how he stumbled upon this idea that took off, and it took off so quick that the business almost imploded. So what a lucky break that was, right? I'm like, my God, for a guy that's cursed, it's like you have a rabbit foot up your ass. You know, like you really have had a lot of lucky breaks, haven't you? So I started helping him find evidence in life that, now the sad, unfortunate thing is his brain was wired, because we really were able to deduce that his mom and dad were pessimistic. They come from a culture that is very pessimistic and always nitpicks and finds problems. So he always magnified the basic normal human problems, other than obviously losing friends in battle. Like that is something I can't relate with. And so one, I was able to help him find the wins in his life. And then we started looking for more evidence. And then we were able to shift the fact that that's just the human experience. Winning seasons, losing seasons, and whatever season you're in, the other season's around the corner, and so that's life. And so he ended up doing really well. The business is thriving, and they're actually looking to do an exit now. The other person, man, this guy was a CEO of a company. Sorry, not CEO, Chief Operations Officer, COO of a company that's in San Diego. He lived in LA. There's some traumatic experiences he had as a kid. Similar to mine, sexual abuse. 3 times a week, he would drive from LA to San Diego after conducting business in San Diego at this big company, and he made good money, really good money. He would stop at mistress number 1's house and her. Then he would stop at mistress number 2's house and her. Then he would stop at Commerce Casino in LA, gamble a shit ton of money, and then go home. And with all that guilt and regret, and if you Google the vibrational frequency chart, you'll see that shame, regret, and guilt are very low on the vibrational frequency chart. And joy, happiness, bliss are very high frequencies. So he would create this low frequency vibe about him by 2 chicks that he shouldn't be, gambling away money, and then going home and starting a fight with his wife. Because guilt, right? And so we, instead of chipping away of, hey, why don't you stop doing that? We started digging into what happened in his past. And I referred him to my therapist, Kevin Downing, who's a great therapist. And so in areas that I'm not necessarily qualified in, if I can find where the problem stems from, but I don't know how to solve that problem, I go, hey, I'm going to work on the other, like your time management, your productivity, your other parts of your life that I'm good at. But I'm going to have you work with Kevin Downing, who's my therapist, and just like me, he's going to take everything to his grave. And today he's happily married, and really that was just a byproduct of he hated himself, and he needed sexual control, because when you've been molested, you are not in control when you've been molested or raped. And so that's how he was exerting his dominance sexually, and he's doing amazingly well now.
Jesus, 2 back-to-backs on a casino vacation is not a fun day for me.
Bro, like not even 1 mistress, 2.
Jeez.
Holy hell, right?
But yeah.
But he's a high performer, and high performers go all in on everything.
Yeah, and you're chasing a high, right? When really, if you peel back the onion skins, you're trying to blunt trauma that has occurred.
Yeah.
And listen, off camera, I'll tell you some stuff, that I've had to work on myself, even with, and I've said this part on my podcast many times, not with this nice backdrop, but I was a gorilla suit, for 2 decades. This is all I knew. My chase was titles and I came to this country with the knowing that I was not going to go back, and I was going to do everything in my power, tick off every box to become the champion. Of course, it on paper it sounds a lot easier than what it became, but my mentality as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old coming over here was one that was savagery. But I didn't get that from a conversation I had with my dad. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have any of the above that, again, we're now having these conversations about.
Yeah.
What I knew and I identified was that I needed to come over to this country. I needed to say goodbye to my family for several months at a time, because it was up to me to change my trajectory on life and change also my family's life too. I identified that at a very young age, going back to your dad with the American, the American dream and chasing that dream. But with these CEOs and these, amazing athletes and various different walks of life that you work in and around, I think the biggest thing is trauma.
Yeah.
And I've identified that myself.
Yeah, it's the greatest gift and it's the greatest curse.
Yeah.
Because we're either going to run away from something or we're going to run towards something. Mm-hmm. And if we can heal through that trauma, the byproduct of it becomes a massive superpower for accomplishment and for service to humanity.
Yeah. This is maybe a personal question. When you stop using trauma to fuel you?
I'm not so I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist.
Yeah.
But one thing I told Kevin, I worked with him for 15 months, my therapist. I worked with him for 15 months. Every Monday at 6 p.m., I wanted to be his last patient for the day because I knew that I'm a handful. Number one. And number two, I needed to come at the end of my day because I didn't want it to affect my work day because I'm so focused on making money and using my money for good, both for my family and to serve humanity. And so the one thing I told him as we started diving deep into what happened to me as a child, those two older boys molesting me in Armenia over and over again until, that's the thing, man, my dad and mom still don't know, and I'll never tell them because they don't need to carry the guilt of that. They're alive, they're in their 80s, but they don't know that escaping Armenia literally freed me from almost daily constant molestation by these two older boys.
But did you know it was wrong?
I knew it was wrong, but I thought I was doing something wrong, right? And Kevin explained to me that they're older boys. A young man is always looking to his dad, his older brother, the older boys in the community as a rite of passage. We're instinctively looking. That's why there's gangs. You look at every gangbanger, there's no dad in his life.
The recruit young.
Exactly. So he looks for the older boys, the gangs, to have that connection with men. Mm-hmm. And so they took advantage of something so beautiful. Instead of mentoring me, they made me feel like if I say anything, it's my fault. Yeah. I'm going to get in trouble for it. And so as I started to work with Kevin and healing through this trauma, I said, Kevin, I've got a chip on my shoulder, fire in my bellies, and rage in my eyes. And I go, you cannot take that away from me. I want to heal, but I don't want to lose like that edge that I have that this trauma's given me. And he chuckled and he goes, you'll never lose it. You'll always have that. It'll always be there. And I identified it as a chip on my shoulder, a fire in my belly, and rage in my eyes. And that's why I say it's a gift. If you could heal through it, you can use it for good. If you don't heal through your trauma, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse, you end up constantly sabotaging your life, limiting beliefs, never reaching your potential. Relationships are no deep meaning to it, are very superficial. Mm-hmm. And your human experience is just average at best, so I don't think I'll ever stop using this trauma as a tool for good. The difference is I use it for a tool for good instead of a tool for self-destruction.
Yeah, I think it's come in and out of my life, I would say, where for the most part it's been, the fuel to my fire. You know, when I was in the gym, where especially leaving my family, knowing that there's nobody around, it's just me. Mm-hmm. Like, you got to dig deep into, I call Pandora's box.
Yep.
And you got to reach into things that are going to get you through them last couple of weeks, long-term thinking, and the short-term is get you through the next couple of reps. Mm-hmm. Because as you know, the harder you diet, the better you look, the worse you feel.
Right.
And for me, trying to make that weight cut at 212 was unforgiving. So I was ready 4 weeks out. So I had to find every little bit of drive. And it was just a mental. I would come back from, especially like leg days and back days, so drained because of the mental turmoil I would have with myself that I would just kind of fall asleep. I was on the way home, just falling asleep. But again, it got me to where I am, but I kind of left a lot of that. And circling back to something I started earlier, I left a lot of that in bodybuilding. And I had to really work hard of killing the ego, killing the identity, because I'm not that guy, that is Mr. Olympia. I'm the legacy, yes, the work ethic, the YouTubes, all that still will stand. But now I'm in different chapters. I feel like I'm in a chapter now where I have a responsibility. I've got this podcast. I've got guests like yourself. And I have a duty to get messages out there. Also align and keep a group of men around me that raise me and rise me.
Right.
Again, this is something that you and I, we align so much on your message. I love it. You talk about having a group of guys around you that are savages. And it's taken me quite some time, because the most people that I had around me were all kind of the bodybuilding mentality. It's like, how can I get bigger arms?
Right.
You know what I mean? No disrespect to my bodybuilding fam out here, but right now I'm chasing financial freedom. My goal is generational wealth. Yeah. I want to make sure that my kids are set when God forbid I leave this earth. And I'm a long way away, and I feel the pressure to do so, but the pressure is there. But nonetheless, for me to get to that next chapter, I had to kill off that guy. There's no longer me waking up early in the morning and be like, oh, it's leg day.
Yeah.
It's now like, okay, my assistant sends me my day, and I'm like, oh shit, this is it. Oh my gosh.
It's a different kind of leg day.
It's a different kind of leg day, yeah. But for you, again, you wear so many hats and you wear them so well. I think that, as I've said to you, I look at you as a huge inspiration to me. And as we are growing in friendship, still, nonetheless, the message that you portray and the message that you push and the message that you are, let's not beat around the bush. This is who you are. There's no click that comes on. I'll even say this. I had the lovely ability of talking to your assistant in between these last couple of months. And what I found out was that she has been with you for double digits.
Yeah, going on a decade. Next year will be a decade.
Yeah, coming up to.
And Ed right there, that's her husband.
That's right.
And he's been my videographer going on, 6 years? Right?
And that's...
Yeah.
That just goes to show, right? Your mentality.
My people are with me for a long time. Yeah.
I believe if you show me loyalty, then I will bring you to the table to eat every time. And these guys know, sitting, behind, in the studio, I've got people around me that have been there from the get-go, like my coach, Neil Hill. I came to this country, and first thing they said if you ain't using this guy or this guy, you're not going to win anything politically. I was like, but I'm undefeated as an amateur, so what am I doing wrong here? So I was like, hey, if we'll play our game. So September would be 20 years.
Wow.
Of us.
Loyalty.
I believe in that. I don't believe in looking over the garden fence for greener grass. Don't get me wrong. I've probably done it in the past and learned my lesson from it. But with the people I have around me now, especially the ones that have been over a decade, they've seen me at my best and my worst. They know my failures. They know my buttons. They know how motivated I am, and how when I commit myself to something, everybody's got to hold on. But they also know that I'm leveling up, and that comes with them leveling up.
Yeah.
And as I'm leading from the front, and as I'm doing new things now, as I'm putting myself into new, scary, uncomfortable things, it's going to see the best version of me. Which, if they're filming that gets the best version of them. So a rising tide raises all ships.
Amen.
And I truly believe that, because I'm a testament to that, So, again, off the point, but still on it, your team speaks. Again, when you've been with somebody a while, kind of like, you might have an eye roll or something. But these people are like, this is the man. He is what he says exactly what he preaches, and he preaches exactly what he says. So,
and
kudos to you, my friend.
First off, thank you. One of the things I'm self-aware enough these days because I've killed my ego many years ago. I still have a hard time accepting compliments, so I'm like,
I can see.
I'm just like cringing, my butthole's puckering, I'm clenching. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you. And
I could go more if you want.
No, please don't. Please
don't.
And I've got such a great team, from Joan and Ed to the 70 or so people that work at HQ and around the country for us. And there's a lesson to that, right? Because as we level up, we feel this responsibility and duty to the people that helped us. And so you said something very powerful, and I don't want your viewers and listeners to miss out on this, that as long as I keep growing and as long as they keep committing to the personal growth themselves, because entrepreneurship, like anyone listening to this, entrepreneurship is the greatest form of self-development ever. You will know how much risk you're willing to take, how much shit you're willing to eat. You will become a better decision maker, a better communicator, a better manager of your feelings and thoughts of others, because you're managing different personality types. And as long as I've told my team that as long as you guys are willing to put this self-development in, you will be with me for years, if not decades, and you will always have a place at the table to eat with me. And to say that, and then have to then go out and create the opportunities for them to also keep working up. Because 10 years from now, Joan started off as an assistant, but she's literally the vice president of my entire coaching company that itself does 8 figures, right? Just one of my companies. And so if I didn't set the example and the standard and strive for that level of dominance in whatever industries I'm in, I wouldn't be able to create the opportunities for my team. And soon they'd go, well, this is stagnant. Mm-hmm. He's living a great life, but I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And so we have that responsibility, man, as leaders, as entrepreneurs, to constantly keep pushing ourselves, pushing our team, setting higher standards, achieving more, to give opportunities for those people that have been loyal to us along the way. And so, to say that they have a seat at the table and they can eat with you is a very powerful statement.
Listen, I wouldn't change my ways. Obviously, they've seen, like I said, me at the beginning. My coach, for example, just to pick up on that. If it wasn't for him, I met him on my very first show. He was the head judge. Yeah. He ran out to me and convinced me to compete for my nation against Scotland, England, and Ireland. Wow. And as a Celt, you bond together. Scotland and Ireland and Wales all come together. We're always against England. So he'd done the whole Braveheart speech in front of my parents, and then he only said one thing: you represent your country, and that was it. So we now have been, like I said, 20 years together. Wow. And I've got massage therapists who've been there for 10 plus, training partners, etc. But your reason why, what is that? That's something I would like to ask. What's your reason why in doing all this? What keeps you still motivated, and what keeps you, wanting to not be complacent?
Yeah, well, it's a two-pronged answer, and it's not as sexy as most people are going to think. Number one, I'm very self-destructive. And so if I'm not busy, again, I'm going to quote Kevin Downing, my wonderful therapist. He said, "You've got an addictive personality, and you're a bull in a china closet. So as long as you keep creating businesses, making a lot of money, creating opportunities for people to work in, and doing a lot of good with that money, never quit until you die." I was like, that is great advice, because I know the moment, cause I'm financially in a place that I could stop. But if I do, I will start finding reasons and those reasons you'll find me in a gutter, either drugged up or coked up or something, dead. You'll be at my funeral very quickly. I'm very self-destructive in that way. And so I use all of this energy for good, number one. Number two, if I was able to come to this country at 6 years old, develop myself into this version of human that I am now, where I get to help humanity. We donate 7 figures every year to Shriners Children's Hospitals. Wow. They do a lot of good for children who need medical surgeries, whose families can't afford it. Toys for Tots every year. We shut down the local Target, and we're buying tens of thousands of dollars of toys for kids who would not have a just tiny little Christmas gift to open on Christmas morning. And then Compassion International. We've got 97 kids adopted through Compassion International. These kids in third world countries get books and pens and pencils and uniforms and food and water. And it's not lost on me that these all three are child-based charities and causes that I donate a lot of money to. It's the most selfish thing I do is to donate to those causes because I'm healing my inner child, right? And I realize that. But that is what keeps me working so hard. And if I was able to do so much in such a shorter amount of time, dude, I'm raising these two amazing kids, Andrew and Chloe, and what we've instilled in our kids, they are going to do so much more for this world. I'm talking 10, 20, 100x more than I ever did. And so they are my biggest reason why. Like, I want to role model to them what a good human is. I want to role model to them what a asset to humanity is. And I want to role model to them what a great citizen of this country is. One that exercises their voice, that does not allow others to be trampled on. And so if I don't live as a role model example, then I'm the biggest hypocrite as a father, and I deserve to lose it all. And I'm a very extreme personality, and so that's how I see things. And people go, man, you sound very extreme. You sound very intense. Good. Yeah. That's how I am. That's how you are. I realize maybe between genetics and personality type and shit that's happened to me, it's been this perfect combination of high speed, tightly wound, intense, who's now doing a lot of good instead of doing a lot of bad like I used to when I was younger. I'll take it. I'll take it. And hey, man, if people want to sit around at home and play video games and have Cheeto dust in their belly buttons, that's okay too. But that's not for me. That's not for my family. That's not for my friends.
Well, I'll say I've met your son twice.
Yeah.
And what you've installed in him as a young man right now, how old is he right now?
He's 17.
17, you did say, yeah, thank you. I think I met him first at 16, I think, and then he turned 17.
Yep.
Yeah. And in that time period, we met, shook hands, looked me in the eyes. He asked me politely, do you mind? And all these things, man, these are the things that I hear that I don't take for granted. I truly enjoy hearing them. I install these things, same things in my daughter. Obviously, my son is, 1.5. But my daughter is at that age now. She's impressionable. You can hear this little American accent and the little, the head going off. She got a little finger goes up. But
you do that really well,
I know,
actually.
I know.
You've become a great American.
That is going to be ripped, right? But one thing I will say, thankfully, down to my wife and myself, we're working hard on making sure she knows, like I said, the core morals. Yeah. Please, thank you. Introduce yourself in a world, in a room that people, they may know you as Flex's daughter, but I want them to leave being like, what a young, pleasant, what a pleasant young girl. Good morals, good manners. And I think that is getting lost in this society in these days and age. And I know that you've, again, going back to your YouTube, there's a lot of young men right now that don't have that figurative father figure that they've lost out on. And I know that you've gone into communities and you've spoken to some of these young men. I know that's, you like me have aligned yourself with certain charities, and unfortunately, some of these young men that I've had the privilege of meeting no longer are on this earth. They just weren't around, or somebody wasn't in their life fast enough where they took their life. And I've met these guys, and again, I've played a role. I've also sat on the other side where I've had conversations with people that have saved them. And that's a very powerful, and also it's also a lot of responsibility, I felt, to be that guy who changed the perspective on somebody that was going to end it. Yeah. We've also on this podcast, I would say out the last 11, I'm realizing more and more that there's a lot of mental health issues in the sport of fitness. Yeah. Self-esteem, trying to keep up with the Joneses, and add in hormones. You got a wild mix of
right.
A lot of different thoughts and feelings and all of the above. And then you add in competition, and that adds another element. It's being accepted. That's another thing. Chasing it for, as you said, likes and comments. Suicide is being brought up more and more. And these are guys that, not naming names, some, like I said, we've been on the podcast, they've openly spoken about it. That blew my mind when they
Because you would have never imagined that,
never
right?
imagined.
Right.
And I've really taken heed in this, and I'm actually in the process right now I am in the process of creating a foundation that's going to link into the fitness industry. And this is actually breaking news. I wasn't even expecting to talk about this, but when this podcast is released, this should be all up and moving. But tying myself into mental health and suicide, because we don't have anybody in the sport that people can turn to, right. Especially when you go down the competitive route. There's no hotline, there's no person, there's no figurative person that these can speak to. But you've done a great job of carving yourself out as that role model, that, I would say, internet dad, to speak about these morals and integrity that these guys recognize that they don't have, but yet want to change. We're not talking about CEOs, we're talking about young guys, impressionable young guys, who know they should be doing better, know their actions are wrong, but are trying so hard to get aligned. And unfortunately, through that battle, we've lost people. But I know that you now have spoken openly about, young men, making sure that they rather than me trying to describe it, what have you come across since you've done your podcast and mental health and suicide? That seems like is a common thread that's been happening.
It is, and it starts with the absent father, absent by way of physically not being there, as in divorced, or they never knew their dad, or absent by way of dad was physically there, but emotionally, mentally unavailable.
Yeah.
It starts there. But it also goes beyond that, in that, again, we talked about life has become so predictable, convenient, complacent. Men are not born with inherent purpose. And I'll give you an example. A woman, when she's born, and as soon as she becomes a little toddler, we hand her a little doll, and she knows exactly what to do. She coddles it. She holds it close. She begins to rock it.
Yeah.
As she becomes a little girl, she begins to dress it and change it. She sees that little doll as her baby. Inherently, from the moment that she has some level of self-awareness, a woman realizes that someday I will have a child, and that child becomes my purpose. Yes, the male, the dad, is involved in that child, in the making of the process. But that child is literally in that woman's body for 9 months. There's a deep connection with that mother that child will never have with that father. However, that mother now has built-in purpose until that child is 18. This is why you hear the term empty nesters when a woman in her late 40s, early 50s says, my child finally went off to college.
Yeah.
And they're depressed finally, and she feels a sense of loss. That's not talked about either, because a woman has built-in purpose, a child. From the moment she has self-awareness, she goes, I can't wait to have a baby. That baby's going to be my purpose, to help it live, to help it learn things, to dress it, to take care of it, to make it a good human and a good member of society. A man does not have built-in purpose. You're not born and all of a sudden someone goes, this will be your purpose. You don't have any innate feeling like a woman does, like, oh my God, I can't wait to have a baby. You just go, I can't wait to have a son. I can't wait to have a child. I can't wait to have a family. But there's no sense of purpose attached to it. A man must develop his purpose. And in the absence of developing your purpose, you will begin to self-destruct. And I'll give you the example of my dog, Cookie. Cookie is part German Shepherd, part Mastiff. She's a big girl. She's about 95 pounds. On a lean day, she's about 94. And Cookie's just a beautiful, beautiful dog, man. Just a big dog. But because she's part German Shepherd, German Shepherds need to have purpose. They need to know that they're shepherding your family, they're protecting your family, that they're playing catch with you every day. They need consistency, they need routine, they need purpose. And in the absence of purpose, a German Shepherd begins to get anxious and depressed. And when a German Shepherd gets anxious and depressed, they begin to dig holes in your backyard. The reason for that is, I found out, they start giving themselves a sense of purpose. And that purpose is, I'm going to dig holes in the backyard, since I'm not shepherding your family, I'm not protecting you, I'm not You haven't given me a sense of purpose. Well, as it turns out, men also need to have a sense of purpose. We need to develop that. We need to have routine, consistency, and purpose. And in the absence of it, we begin to dig holes in our life. Those holes show up as pornography, as alcohol, drugs, things to escape, video games, TV, food, whatever the vice is, we end up digging holes in our life because we get anxious and depressed. And when a man is anxious and depressed, it is very easy for him to start thinking of an exit plan, if you know what I mean, right? And so I share this with every bodybuilder, pro and amateur, and any fitness person listening to this right now, or anyone in general, whatever it is you're doing. One of my top coaching clients had a $300 million business, man. And we built that business to a $1.3 billion business, and then he sold it.
Wow.
He sold it. He didn't go on to create anything else.
No purpose.
He said he lost his sense of purpose, mission, and team. Yeah. And every man needs that. Mission, purpose, and team. And the absence of mission, purpose, and team, think about it. You all of a sudden stop competing. Thank God you were smart enough, or you have right people around you to go, hey man, you better find a new sense of purpose, whether it's this podcast, whether it's creating a gym, a supplement line, a apparel line, a sponsorship, whatever, but you better move on to something else because you're a German Shepherd. Every single one of us as men, we are German Shepherd, and we need to have something to look forward to that is a cause that's greater than us. And in the absence of that, we begin to go self-destruct, anxious, depressed, and then we start thinking suicide. Even pro athletes who have left pro sports and decided to take a year or two off before they venture into something else, those year or two have been the most self-destructive years ever for them. They come find me, and then we get them back on track. And so I always say, if you're thinking of leaving your sport, retiring one day soon, you better start developing your next thing. Transition to your next mission, purpose, and team. And don't just go, I got enough money, I'm going to coast for a while. That is how you end up with the permanent exit plan.
I wish I talked to you, Matt, because
Did you experience that?
It was a tough.
Right.
And there was a lot of things that I had to do daily, whether I wanted to do them or not. It was all, as a man, again, I always think to myself, I've got it easy. My dad done this. But obviously, different generation, different variables, right? My dad doesn't have the responsibility of, just under 200 employees too.
Right.
So there's different circumstances, different weather storms. But I definitely felt, and I still have the moments. I'm not going to lie to you. For me, I'm very open and honest. I went from being known as a champion, the best in the world. And whether that's, somebody could say, yeah, but you still, whatever. But I still know that I am not working like that every single day for that trophy. And I remember also when I won that trophy, I was on to the next. So I was never fulfilled. The only thing that's really made me complete is the birth of my kids. I felt that like, wow,
Yeah.
And my wife too. I should preface that before she kills me. But again, when I was chasing these titles, I thought like this is going to be it. This is getting it, winning it. Maybe it's defending it, and then maybe it's winning multiple ones. The last one was when I felt that I smelt the roses on, but I hit the highest of highs. So then I was like, what's next? What's next? So now, what I like about this next chapter of life is I still get the nerves of chasing stuff because I'm putting myself into things. And I'm getting so much out of experiencing different versions of myself. Yeah. I do things that make me, nervous, scared, all these things that I did get from bodybuilding. But now it's in a different realm that I haven't trained for, like I did for bodybuilding. Just like, public speaking.
Right.
I just jumped straight into public speaking, and obviously that's how you and I met. And telling the story and being a storyteller I love to do. So if I remind myself of like, hey, just do what you do. Be you, tell some jokes and connect with the audience. Then when you take public speaking out of it, or the definition of what people think public speaking is, you just eliminate the nerves and everything else. But there's things that you touched on, and again, I don't want to prolong and take much more of your time because honestly, I know I could speak to you all day. What are we at right now, Tyus, if you don't mind me asking? Oh, we're at 2 hours. Jeez Louise, we'll land
Time flies, man.
We'll land this plane.
Let's land it.
The state of men right now is a topic that I've been talking about quite consistently. You know, again, we mentioned earlier in the podcast about these guys from World War II, and they came back from war and seen things and still went back to work. My grandfather down the coal mine, you know, my father was in steel, but these guys who came back to work, they still had to, you know, be the gentleman to my grandmother, and, you know, all these things. And I thankfully got the experience growing up through the lessons of my grandfather and my father. I see is missing so much in this day to day, like just even the smallest things, opening the door for your wife, or you mentioned something up in one of your podcasts about, you know, letting your wife go up an escalator,
up the escalator, and you stand behind her.
All these things, to me, it's just normalcy. But now you've got, you know, this society that girls want to be, you know, stand on their own 2 feet.
Well, you know why that is, though, too, right? When men begin to abandon masculinity and chivalry, women have to step into a masculine energy, which is very foreign to them, and which is a energy that they don't want to step into.
Yeah.
They feel they need to. And so what ends up happening is a very abrasive relationship, because she feels like, hey, if you would step into your masculinity, I can become the feminine woman that you want, right? And I get it. There's so many women out there right now who are so far off the reservation, they may not be the right ones, but I can promise you that the right ones are out there. Yeah. But you have to be the man to attract that. So it's like, well, where's she at? I'll tell you what. You get lean, you get jacked, you develop money, you develop self-mastery, you become great at storytelling and articulating, you become a good human, and you will be a magnet for a beautiful, traditional, loving, loyal woman. You don't have to go find her. You will attract her. And that's what most men forget, is step into your masculinity and you will become a magnet for what you're looking for.
So for the guys that are watching this and be like, yeah, but how do I do that? What would step one be for you?
Step one is simple in that, okay, what are the core tenets of man? There's a great book out there by Jack Donovan called The Way of Men. And he talks about strength, honor, courage, and mastery. So strength, as in not only physical strength, but emotional, mental strength. Like, hey, man, start working through your traumas. Develop emotional and mental muscles, not just physical muscles. There are muscles like resiliency muscles, resourcefulness muscles, communication muscles, decisiveness muscles, emotional, mental muscles. So strength, honor, be a respectable, honorable man who keeps a promise to yourself. If you are going to set the alarm clock for tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., don't hit the snooze button. You're breaking a promise to yourself. An honorable man does not break the promise to himself. Like, be the kind of man that, what did you tell me? You're like, dude, you showed up early. I'm like, yeah, early is on time is late, and late is unforgivable. I showed up early in case we're going to start early, and then I'll hang out and wait until the guy's set up.
And that's such a simple thing to do, right?
It's an honorable thing to do.
It's an honorable thing to do.
It means I respect you, your time, and your place. And guess what? Because I had time, I walked around your gym. I knew inevitably there's going to be people who listen to my shit, and I got to say hi to a few people.
Love it.
Which then does what? It increases the value of my friend and his gym. Like, wow, I work out at Flex's gym, and just random people pop in that I follow and say hi to me, right? Like, why not do that for my friend? And so honor, strength, courage, mastery. Master skill sets beyond just lifting weights or being an athlete. Like, master the skill set of making money. Master the skill set of communication. Master the skill set of charisma, of storytelling. And when you do, you become a well-rounded man, the kind of man that I respect and the kind of man that a woman is attracted to.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of turmoil right now, especially in this. Well, I see in the last couple of years, several years, you know, there's been a lot of, going back to what you were saying with the media and separation and you know, with social media, you are your brand, right? You can portray whoever you want to be, even if that's not the case.
Right.
And I think there's so much now confliction out there. There's so much nonsense out there too. You know, every time I see something on social media, I see a guy that is, you know, self-deprecating. There's guys who are doing all kinds of nonsense that it doesn't fit the model of what I believe a man should be. And it's, listen, each to their own. You can do whatever you want, but when you get shot down for being a masculine guy, then I feel this is where my part in society as a man needs to step up. I preach about my moral integrity. I know where I've come from. You know, I'm not going to conform to this new ideology that has just been created by this new generation when there's been hundreds and hundreds of years of blueprint
Right.
of how to be a man,
Right.
and what right and wrong is, and how to treat a woman, how to treat your family, how to just be in society. Now all of a sudden there's this new rule book that's been created, and there's pronouns, and and again, live your life how you want it to be, but when you're trying to force it down the mouths of people who have, you know, Christianity, or just say religion, right? And religion that has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Oh, this is modern day society. You need to conform to no, I don't.
No, I don't.
I don't.
No, I don't. Because I have a moral standard, right? So there's societal standards, which can vary, and there's moral standards, which never vary. So oftentimes I will refer to myself as an outlaw. There are laws that I will not conform to, therefore making myself an outlaw, because I have moral standards that I will conform to, and they outweigh the laws of man. And so let's take away the hundreds of years of tradition as a man. Let's take a modern guy and stand him in your gym, and when a woman walks by, go, hey man, what do you think the right thing to do right now? Like a modern guy who believes in the modern way of being a man, what do you think the right thing to do right now? He knows in his gut the right thing to do is to say, hi, how are you? Because as a male, you are the threatening, more dominant force. She's probably has a little bit of fear and trepidation walking by you as a stranger. Okay, what else? She's walking out the door. What else should you do? Oh, maybe I should open the door. Every dude knows in their gut what they need to do. We don't need years of blueprints. We don't need years of like tradition. It's like if you just followed your gut, you would be a good man. But you're so afraid to follow your gut, your moral standards that are within, given to you by your creator, given to you by your consciousness, that you go, well, I feel this way, but I don't want to voice that because that is against the current standards of norm. And therefore, we are complicit, not me, not you, but those are complicit in this erosion of society because they know what to do. I don't care how unicorn-ish you are. You know to open doors. You know to say please and thank yous. To say hi. That if it's dark, you're the dude. Even no matter how gay you are, you're the dude that's got your head on a swivel in a dark parking lot, making sure that the people that are more likely to be attacked make it safely to their car. So don't for a minute say that this is how things are. Equality, nothing. Because when there's a big giant explosion, everyone's looking towards the big burly masculine men to come and save the day. So we all instinctively know who to call for. Therefore, that means we all instinctively know how to show up.
Well, say there was this explosion, I think there'd be a lot of people wiped out right away, just based on the fact that instinct alone, some of these people don't know, and that's something I'm installing in my kids. Don't know how to fish, don't know how to change a car tire, don't even know how to do the basic things that, again, that I don't know where or what or why they have chosen just to ignore a lot of this stuff, but then choose to put themselves into, you know, things like eating Cheetos and playing the computer games, right? But each to their own, as I've said. But I want to say this, mate. In and throughout this podcast, you said so many things, and I've kind of took mental note. One of the things that I did know in my research, found out about you in my research, is we have a lot more commonality, and I want to end the podcast with this. Outside of us both being immigrants to this country, outside of us now being dads and truly, you know, teaching our kids how to be morally correct and everything else, the alignment is a school teacher, both for you and I, kind of changed our trajectory on how we think in life. And for me, I was told I will not mount up to shit. I'm going to have two directions. You either become the rugby player that you are supposed to be, or you're off to the military. So this is a young whippersnapper, Flex Lewis, having again told this. I was like, I'll prove you wrong. And at that point in time, because I played high-level rugby, I was wanted by the Navy, the RAF, and the Army. So I went to the recruitment office, done all the tests, done all the physical tests. They failed me on flat feet.
No way. You too. That is bananas. So my school teacher was Mrs. Boyer. She was literally slamming me into the wall. Funny thing about that story was, and she probably should have, I was very loud and obnoxious in her class. What she didn't realize is the wall she's slamming me against, as she's trying to teach me a lesson, there's a fire extinguisher on it. So I'm whacking my head onto this fire extinguisher.
She's doing that on purpose, Bedros. Don't worry.
You're right. Maybe she knew. But she's slamming me against the wall saying, you need to go into the Marine Corps. They're the only ones who can set you straight. And so when I got out of high school, holy crap, bro, your story and my story are so parallel.
Yeah.
I went to the Marine Corps recruiting station, myself and my good friend David Sanborn. I got there. I passed every physical, strength, endurance, and then flat feet. Yeah. At the time, the Marine Corps was not putting orthotics or didn't have orthotic-based shoes.
And glasses.
Yeah, okay, so yours was vision. Mine was fine, but my vision was fine. I just had flat feet, and so they said, because of that, we can't take you. And I was like, holy, I got to find a new path, but I will prove Mrs. Boyer wrong no matter what.
So, no, mine, there was two things that were failing people on, flat feet and the use of glasses. So
you had to wear glasses?
No. I had flat feet.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm saying...
Oh, you're saying those were the two things?
Yes. And a lot of great soldiers were lost, just down to that stupid freaking fact. Now,
Isn't that dumb? Because I right now I could go probably run a marathon if I needed to.
Oh, no question.
With my flat feet and these Chuck Taylors.
Yeah. But you know what? Everything happens for a reason. That door closed, and I know you faced the same kind of like, what next?
Yeah, that's nuts.
I started up my first business at 19, and after 3 years, you heard the story. I won Young Businessman of the Year. I had an award of King Charles won a CAF scholarship, and I was able to scale my business from one man in a van to multiple people. My mum was secretary, and I had everybody working for me at that point in time.
What a beautiful story, man.
And I went back to the school, walked into the class, and I said, of course, I was welcome with both arms. And they said to me, "Oh my God, look at this!" At this point,
we knew you would make it.
You would, and I said, "You guys, you in the front, you sitting here for any particular reason? Have you been moved, yeah?" And I said, "Whatever she tells you, do the opposite." Because whatever I called her out in class, she wanted to make herself be this, I would say, queen of raising people, but truly she pulled me down that day, and I went out to that office with trauma to prove her wrong and prove the people who believed in me right.
Just as powerful, by the way, because there are people who believe in you, and it is a disservice and a dishonor to them by not proving them right.
Absolutely. So as I said, I told these kids in the class, I said, I'm sure you're sitting here for a reason, because you're the class clowns, as was I.
Yeah.
I had ADHD, I had dyslexia. They was not even diagnosed when I was in school. I found out that first week in college. They pulled me in, they said, "Hey, you have a reading age of X." And I was like, "What? Really? I get a free laptop? Cool." But again, it solidified something in me that I suppressed, I put down, and I said to myself, I'm stupid. And I knew I wasn't. So when I won my first Young Businessman of the Year, I said to myself, I'm not stupid. I'm just a little slower in learning, but if you give me the time, I will take this knowledge and I will run with it. And that's something you have done for me and for many people. You've given people the ability to have the knowledge to do whatever they want with. And I think that you have such a powerful opportunity to change much more minds, and anything I can do for you, my friend, I am there. Sign me up for, because again, you've touched my heart.
Thank you.
And you've done a lot for me as a growing friend.
Likewise, and I feel the same, man. As you launch this charity and this cause, I'm there to support you and your community, man. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Well, I think that's a beautiful way to end this podcast.
You're a natural at this.
Oh, I don't know about that, but this accent has got subtitles running underneath it, and Tyus puts whatever you want to hear. But I do have to shake your hand. I don't do this. Really appreciate you, Bedros. For the fans who
thank you.
listening to this on Spotify, and for the fans who are watching this on YouTube, you know, this man has truly come in just for this podcast, and honor his word. And I can't leave, you know, without saying, is there anything that you want to talk about, push and promote before we sign off?
The only thing I want to promote is for everyone to just press and push themselves to their highest self, man. The highest self that you will ever find is on the other side of the mental, emotional, and physical work that's required of you. If people would do that, and then once they develop themselves, pay it forward to others, that is the greatest gift that anyone could ever give me.
Amen, guys. The legend himself, Bedros. I am honored to have you here. And as you guys have heard, take notes. This is a powerful one, and please watch it back. See the parts that we are going to be, you know, putting down in the, what would they be called, Tyus? Segments or whatever it is. Here I go. I was landing that plane. Welcome to a podcast with Flex Lewis. I was landing that plane so well then too. But if you guys are obviously bookmark these different subcategories down below, because we've talked about a lot of different things, and I really want you to revisit them and truly watch and listen again and again. Head on over to his podcast. Make sure you follow him on his Instagram, which is Bedros Keuilian.
At Bedros Keuilian, yes, sir.
And everything that this gentleman has been doing, because he's a true moral compass, and again, an incredible dad, family man, and human being. So I think without saying, that's it. Wrapping it up. Straight Out The Lair. We are out.